Welcome to the SoCal Real Estate Development Podcast. I'm your host, Peter Barakoff, where we interview the go-getters in the industry. Today's guest is Greg Dickerson, entrepreneur, real estate developer, and mentor to high-level investors and entrepreneurs. Thank you for coming on to the podcast, Greg. How are you?
Doing great, Peter. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Can you please introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yeah. So I'll give you the long story short. I'm a natural born entrepreneur. I was very fortunate at a young age. My dad taught me if there was something that I wanted to do, I needed to figure out how to go get the money to do it. So I was the kid that would just knock on your door. Hey, my name's Greg. I live down the street. I need to make some money to take karate lessons. So I'll do whatever. I'll rake your grass, cut your grass, wash your car, walk your dog. If you don't have a dog, I'll get you one and then I'll walk him. So I'm that kind of guy, right? I'm not afraid to cold call and knock on doors. So I learned that skill, which is a skill, cold calling and door knocking at a very young age. Let's fast forward. I graduated high school. I joined the Navy right out of high school. I did not go to college. I worked in restaurants and always, had little side jobs before I joined the Navy. After I got out of the Navy, I did restaurants and construction. And I was working in a restaurant, and this guy hired me that was doing an addition on the restaurant I was working in. He hired me to, come clean up after him while he was doing an addition. That's how I got my entrance into construction. Fast forward to 1987, I graduated high school in 85, Navy 85 to 89. 1997, I decided to leave, my full-time W-2. I was managing restaurants and I had a little construction business on the side, doing just little odd jobs and decks and fences and handyman stuff. I moved to the Outer Banks of North Carolina in 1997, exited, the W-2 world, went out on my own as an entrepreneur, full-time in 1997, started a little remodeling handyman company. Did 250,000 in sales my first year. 7 years later, I was one of the largest builder developers in the area. We were doing 30 plus million a year in building. I started 12 other companies, a lot of them related to the construction industry. And I took all of the profits from all of those businesses and reinvested those into real estate investments and development projects and scaled everything from there, and ultimately ended up doing during that period about 250 million in real estate development projects using my own money, going to the banks. I didn't have any partners or investors. It was just me using my cash flow from the businesses to kind of scale. So that's my long story short. Fast forward now, that was, 20, 30 years ago when I started all that, again, 1997. So now, like you said, I coach and mentor people all over the country and around the world doing all kinds of different things. The projects I'm involved in is just fewer, bigger deals these days. And I invest in the markets and crypto and things like that. So that's me in a nutshell.
What inspired you to develop, Greg?
So I got into development because I had a remodeling company and I was doing work for some investors that were coming down. I was on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. They were coming down, buying beach houses, renovating them, and then renting them out and then ultimately selling them. So I started working for these guys and I was asking them, why are you doing this? Like I had one guy who was the number two guy at Citibank. There were other successful entrepreneurs. Some of them were real estate developers. I'm like, why are you doing this? And they explained to me the tax benefits, the appreciation. The market was just in an upswing from 97 up until, 04, 05, which was the peak of our market. So they kind of explained to me how this all worked and how they were financing them. And I said, man, I would love to do one of these deals with you. And they said, well, you show us good performance on these projects and you bring something to the table, some cash or something like that, maybe we'll do something. So, that's what I started doing. I was really successful doing these projects for them. And then ultimately I brought some cash into some of the deals and, they kind of showed me how to do it. I had a friend of mine who was a realtor, and one of the first investment deals I ever did was a lot flip. He came to me and he said, hey, here's this lot, over here that we could buy. You put up all the money. My dad's got a client that'll buy it from us. We can make a nice little spread. I'll take care of everything. You put up the money, I'll do the rest. So I don't know, it was $100,000 lot. I put up all the money. 30 days later, we sold it for like 130, 140,000. We split the profits. And I just thought that was the greatest thing ever. I was like, wow, again, this was back when I was only doing, less than $1 million a year in revenue. I'd never made more than 50 grand a year in my life. And all of a sudden we do a flip in 30 days, it made $30,000. I mean, the light bulb really went off in my head at that point to where you need land positions to really secure your profits in real estate during the time of the market that I was in. So that's what I did. I started going after vacant land. And the way it worked is I would tie the land up, I would flip it to my investors for a profit. Then I would build them a house, like investors that were coming to the beach, not my investors, but people that were coming to the beach that wanted beach houses. So if you wanted a beach house, I was the guy that had the lot. You had to buy the lot for me. I'd make a profit on that. And then I would build the house for you and I'd make a profit on that. And then fast forward, we had a friend, my wife's, one of her best friends from college husband was a developer in the Northern Virginia area. And he and I were kind of talking about real estate and what was going on in the Outer Banks. So he and I partnered up. He was actually one of my first, he was the first person I ever partnered with on real estate deals. That ultimately he ended up cheating me, but ultimately taught me the most valuable lesson and taught me how to build spec houses. So we ended up doing about 6 spec house deals together. He was supposed to be the money. I was supposed to be the builder, and we were going to split all the profits. Well, I ended up putting up the money. I ended up guaranteeing the debt with him. He actually, kind of conned me into all these things. He didn't really have any money. He was way over leveraged in his world, and his world was tanking, and I didn't even know it. He was wrapped up in lawsuits with his partners. I didn't know all of that until after we started doing deals together. We were supposed to sell the houses. And, I wanted to sell the houses to kind of build my cash flow. So after the houses were done, he was like, no, let's keep them. Let's run them for a year and do this and that. And I'm like, look, I want to cash out so I can, do these other things. Well, he ended up refinancing the houses and didn't tell me without my signature, took me off the note. He retained all the houses and pulled all the equity out. So we ended up going to court, and I ended up settling for, about a quarter of what those houses were really worth at the end of the day. So, you know, taught me a very valuable lesson in terms of having everything in writing, know who your partners are, make sure that you've got things in a way that they couldn't do something like that, take you off a deed or something. I didn't even, still to this day, I'm not sure how he did that. I guess he falsified the documents, but he did teach me how to build spec houses. That's where I really got my real first ground up start real estate development, was doing those spec houses. And then I just kind of scaled from there. So valuable lessons there.
What what resources did you rely on to stay up to date on current development trends during the time?
So basically watching the market, watching what was going on and where, what the market demand is and what the, different types of properties are good for. Again, I started with residential spec houses because that's the market I was in. It was a beach house market. There wasn't a lot of inventory at the time, and there was a lot of land. So when there's not enough inventory on the market and there's an abundance of land, in housing, that's a great time to be building. Fast forward to today, there's not a lot of inventory on the market, land or houses. It's a great time to be a builder if you can get land positions, because there's a demand for housing and not a lot of inventory. So you just got to stay in tune with the market, talk to realtors, talk to other developers, watch what's going on and where, what are the trends, what are the things that are successful, what's the demand in the market. And when you're looking at land, you need to understand your market and all those fundamentals to understand what the highest and best use of a piece of land is, to move forward.
Oh, great, great. What are some common misconceptions about real estate development? People say, you hear, oh, it's very risky, but didn't seem like didn't seem like that to you.
Yeah. So to me, so what is risk? So let's define risk. But yes, that is one of so the misconceptions are it's expensive, it's risky, you have to have a lot of money. But that's the biggest thing, is that you need a lot of money and it's risky. Another misconception is, that you can make a ton of money as a real estate developer. That can be true. All of these things can be true. So let's take them one at a time. Risk. So what is risk? Number one, risk is, that word comes from the insurance industry, right? So it's assessing loss. Risk is, calculating loss. So the number one mistake people make investing in real estate development, is they don't know how to accurately calculate the risk, and they cannot withstand the hit if that risk comes through. The financial cost. They're not able to kind of work their way through it. So you got to start with accurately calculating the risks. What can go wrong? And you need to allow, a fund, a reserve, for any kind of overruns or mistakes or things like that. So there's a lot of different ways to mitigate risk. One is through, having number one, knowing what you're doing. Number two, having a good contractor, or being a good contractor if you are one. Number three, having good partners. I made a mistake. I had a bad partner. That was a risk that I did not assess, and I didn't calculate, what that would cost me. Number three, having good attorneys, good advisors around you, good contracts, with investors, partners, whatever you're doing. And, number four, understanding your market, and that's where a lot of people make a mistake. They don't assess what's the risk in this market if what I think is going to work doesn't work. And what are my multiple exits for this project? How can I get out of this? Or, break even or cash flow. So those are, underwriting and risk, right? You got to underwrite the deal, which is assessing the viability of the project, analyzing the income and expenses and values, accurately calculate the risk, be able to withstand that risk. And then once you do those things, you can get a level of comfort to where you can withstand any kind of hit that could happen during that process. And I went through 2008 and 9, and there were a lot of risks that came to light that you couldn't even foresee, or account for back then. That was a big, deep hit, to the real estate market. And I saw a lot of people get wiped out. A couple of my mentors were billionaires. They were brothers. They were two of the largest developers in the Hampton Roads region at the time, and they got wiped out because they didn't accurately calculate the risk. They weren't able to withstand the hit when it happened. They guaranteed the debt, put up all the equity, so they got wiped out. So that's the biggest thing is risks. But so, those are ways you can mitigate it, but there's always things that are, unforeseen and stuff like that. So as a real estate developer, you need to have, thick skin, you got to have a strong stomach, and you got to have patience, right? So real estate development requires patience. It requires patient capital. So then number two, it takes a lot of money to do real estate development. It does, but it doesn't have to be your money, right? It can be other people. It can be partners. It can be equity. There's a lot of different ways to, offset the amount of money that it takes to do a real estate development project. But you need deep pockets and you need patient capital, and that's got to be from somebody, not necessarily you. And then number three, you can make a ton of money and get rich in real estate development. Yeah, as long as things work out and as long as you're doing the right thing. And again, not every property is right for every use, and not every use is right for every property. So it starts with understanding and identifying and understanding your market, understanding what the highest and best use is, going through those exercises we talked about to kind of identify that. What are the trends? What are the demands? What's the regulatory environment look like? What is your likelihood of getting approved? And how feasible are the numbers? Does the project work? Does it make a profit? And what are your risks? What do the risks cost if they come through? And then what are your multiple exits if you're wrong? If you're just flat out wrong, can you rent it? Can you lease it? Can you sell it? Can you, just give it back to the bank? What are your exit options if you're absolutely wrong? So those are the ways that you mitigate risk in real estate development.
Oh, that's great. What was your biggest obstacle when you were doing your developing, or even today? What are the obstacles somebody might face?
So when I first got started, my biggest obstacle was I didn't know what I didn't know. That was it. I just did not know what I did not know. I didn't have somebody like me, although I had people that I was doing projects for, and I had, this one guy that took advantage of me. I didn't have the knowledge that I have now, that I could have done much bigger projects. I could have done much more projects, and I could have raised capital. I didn't know how to raise capital and do all that. I was just using my own cash, because I didn't want to, especially after that one experience, I didn't want to get tied up with anybody else. I just wanted to do, my own thing. Um, and I stayed in a very, small area, right? Small region. So when it comes to real estate investing or real estate development, you have two choices. If you want to be narrow in the type of asset you're investing in, you have to broaden your geography. You have to expand because there's only so many things you can do in your market. But if you want to stay narrow in your geography, which I did, then you have to expand the type of asset that you get into. And that's what I did. And I did a substantial amount, for where I was with the, self-education. I was self-taught, even though I didn't go to college. I'm very highly self-educated. I poured into myself, over the years. And, I spent a lot of time, energy, and effort, building smaller companies that were only so scalable. I mean, when you're in a market as a builder, there's only so much market share you can get, in that certain market, and there's only so far you can go versus, being in a position where you can scale, on a much larger scale. So, basically at the end of the day, I just didn't know what I didn't know. Today, your biggest, roadblocks and difficulties right now, number one is the regulatory environment. That's very unpredictable. And there's a lot of anti-development movements out there. Number two, financing. Interest rates are at all-time highs. It's difficult to borrow money, especially for real estate development projects in this climate, because banks are overexposed in general. There's a couple $1 trillion worth of, real estate debt that's coming due over the next couple of years. So that's putting a lot of pressure on banks. So they're reluctant, if a bank is underwater in their portfolio until they get that worked out, they're kind of reluctant to lend. So credit's tightening, interest rates are high, the regulatory environment's difficult. Those things were all much easier back when I was coming up. Money was available, it was cheap, And, people were hungry for inventory, so it wasn't as difficult back then, even though there was still some resistance that you still faced as a developer. It's just nowhere near like it is now.
Yeah, I wasn't really expecting to ask this question, but you kind of hit on something. How does somebody mitigate against a bad partner? It sounds like it really hits you hard.
So you really need to investigate them. Partnerships like a marriage. So you need to really investigate them. You need to have really good agreements. We didn't have any of those. They were all just verbal. We didn't have anything really in writing at the time. I didn't go to an attorney first. So you need to specify everybody's role. So like he said, he was going to put up the money. I was going to do the work. He was supposed to bring the debt and all that. I ended up putting up the money to start the projects. I ended up guaranteeing the debt with him. So we should have had a contract in writing that spelled out what everybody was going to do. And if that person doesn't fulfill their role, then you have a exit plan in that agreement, in that partnership. So really that's it. Know your partner, specify the roles, have good contracts, good agreements done by opposite attorneys. Your partner needs their own attorney. You need your own attorney, just to make sure everything that could possibly go wrong is already thought out. It's already spelled out. It's already in there. And that communication in advance eliminates 90% of any conflicts that could potentially arise. And I see this to this day over and over with people out there, especially even people I coach that are getting into partnerships. They want to shake hands and go do something. I'm like, wait a minute, let's stop. Let's do these things and get out there. So know who you're getting involved with and understand that, it is a marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, marriage definitely. How can someone new get started in development? Can you share some points?
Yeah, yeah, I get this question all the time, and it really doesn't matter whether you're a college grad or you're somebody like me that didn't go to college, or you're a builder, or you're just somebody who just wants to get in development. So there's three main ways. You need three things, right? So you need expertise, you need capital, and you need deals, right? Those are the three things you need. You don't need all three of those. You can be one of those three. So think about that. Do you have capital or access to it? Do you have deals or access to them where you can get them under control? Maybe your family has a piece of land, friends that have land, whatever. You can get a good opportunity under contract and under control that you can bring to a developer that has the capital and has the expertise, or you need to get the expertise. How do you get the expertise? Well, there's college courses on real estate development, so you can take classes. There's courses out there online to get the basic understanding. I have courses on real estate development that'll give you a good foundation and understanding. You went through those courses, what it takes and how to put land under contract, what you need to look for, just the whole steps to real estate development projects and how to become a developer. And then you can go to work with a developer, go to work for a developer, find somebody who's doing what it is you want to do and go to work for them and start wherever you can start and just kind of work your way up. Or you can be like me and, if you're a builder, general contractor, do some projects for developers or other investors and learn by doing, learn that way. And if you want to start a general contracting company, you want to become a builder, the same thing would apply there. There's courses that you can take for construction management. You can go to work for a builder and learn, or if you're currently working for a builder, you could start your own company, like I did, and work your way up there. And the biggest thing you need to do, whatever it is you want to do, if you want to be a real estate developer, if you want to be a builder, you want to get in the industry, you need to surround yourself with people that know what you don't know, that are doing what you want to do, and that can help you. And that's in, like a mentor like me. You want to have a mentor, whether it's paid or somebody that you're working for or somebody you need a mentor to help you and guide you, somebody you can trust, somebody that is not going to cheat you, those types of things. So you want to surround yourself. When I built my building company, I didn't know how to build houses before I built my first house. I hired people that had been building houses for 20 years with one of the largest building companies in the area. I wanted to be a big building company, so I hired them to come work with me and build a company. So they taught me how to do it. And I learned from all of my, architects, engineers, surveyors, all of the professional consultants that you have in a real estate development project. You want to learn from them by asking good questions and understanding what you're doing and paying attention. So those are really the ways, to get started. The biggest thing, surround yourself with people that are doing what you want to do, where you want to do it, how you want to do it. And ultimately they are where you want to be, and either go to work for them, partner with them, or hire them. Those are really the ways to get started.
Ah, great. With that, we'll wrap it up. Hey, Greg, thank you for all that information. How can listeners get a hold of you?
Yeah. So gregdickerson.com, all my information's there, YouTube channel, podcast, all my courses, everything's right there, gregdickerson.com.
Great. Thank you.